You just mentioned the AIPAC connection. Of course, AIPAC was not around and when John Nelson Darby was, that I know of, but there seems to be some sort of tie-in with geopolitical issues and dispensationalism, Schofield, where this started. Can you tie some of that together?
And I don't know that there's some perfect documentation that, has the Rothschilds saying that they want to, fund the Schofield Bible. But you have Oxford University printing the Schofield Bible to be marketed in the West, particularly in America, right around the time that the British Empire was wanting to, set up basically their outpost in the Middle East, which was Israel. So you have the Balfour Declaration, and then you have the Palestine Mandate, all these different British mandate positions that they wanted to make sure America was on board with. And it's a very viable thesis that the Oxford Schofield Bible was promoted in America to help sway the opinion. That doesn't mean that the people who put the Bible together didn't actually believe this. I'm sure C.I. Schofield and John Darby really believed their positions. I don't think they were con men. I just think that they were in delusion, as many Protestants and evangelicals are. But I don't exactly, the beginnings of the Plymouth Brethren were these Anglicans who were low church Anglicans who wanted to begin these sort of house Bible study churches, or these sort of decentral. It's kind of the early phases of what we think of as like a non-denominational house church or something like this. And so they weren't really Anglicans, but they come out of Anglicanism, the Plymouth Brethren. And they're kind of a weird puritanical type of thing. They spawned weirdos like Aleister Crowley, the famous Satanist, was actually raised as a Plymouth Brethren. And one of their guys just decided that he had read the Bible and figured out all the prophetic stuff. And Anglican British Protestant theology has its own weird series of weirdos in history, and where you have, on the one hand, Anglo-Israeliophile ideas, which began, I think, in the 1700s. There were certain Anglican ministers who had come up with a theory that the lost tribes of Israel in the Old Testament are somehow the British people. Who knows, right? But that contributes, I think, to some of the perhaps ideology of the British Empire. And you have some of these mythologies that still float around in the British Empire, that the king and the queen are descendants of Jesus or Joseph of Arimathea and all this kind of nonsense. So British Israelite theory is a little bit, I think, in the background of this, because of this emphasis on the idea that somehow the British Empire is in some way uniquely connected to the house of David and Jesus, and it's just kind of weird and made up, but that's there. And then you get these low church Anglicans studying the Bible to figure out the prophecies for the first time. And lo and behold, you have this really heavy emphasis on Zionism once again, at the same time as you have this push for Zionism amongst the upper crust, or at least half of the upper crust of the British Empire. And I've done whole lectures on this because the British Empire was very split at its top between a lot of the operatives and spies who were Arabophiles, people like famous spies like T.E. Lawrence, Gertrude Bell, St. John Philby. They were the operatives for the British Empire doing spy work and espionage work in the Middle East. They basically carved up the Middle East for the British Empire. They were all they loved Islam, and they were obsessed with Arab culture. And then you had this other faction of the Rothschilds and others who were very much Zionists. They didn't care so much for Arabs. And they were pushing for the Balfour Declaration and for, the state of Israel to be set up under the British imperial mandate. And that's, of course, what ended up happening. And a lot of those British Arabophile spies warned that it would lead to this terrible powder keg situation. Anyway, so that's the sort of the geopolitical historical setting. And so I do think there's a good basis to theorize that they did want this study Bible in the West and America to, particularly influenced the minds of the evangelicals. And, America is largely a Protestant evangelical country. Probably number 2 is Catholic. I'm not sure exactly the stats, but yeah, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm rambling really long.
No, you're doing great.
But yeah, I think that's the origins. But why would Oxford University and Anglican,
right?
Why would they be so heavily producing? I mean, yeah, you could say, well, they're trying to make money, but I mean, I think there's also a geopolitical, soft power influence that's behind that.